All right, it is recording.
Do you want to do another introduction?
Yes, sorry. So hello, Sages. Today we are meeting with Dr. Yolanda Youngs. She's our newest faculty on campus. She's amazing and very willing to work with our students. If you have email questions or anything, she's always so responsive and great. And we're really excited to talk with her today and get to know her research interests, get to know personal interests, the classes that she teaches, excuse me, English is hard, and all that good stuff. So I will stop talking and I will let Dr. Youngs take over. So thank you for meeting with us today, Dr. Youngs.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the great introduction. And thank you all for being here today. So today, of course, I want to talk about research and teaching and some of the things I've been doing on campus and I plan to do on campus as well. So broadly, in terms of my background and things that I'm interested in, I'm a very broadly trained geographer. So that means that my expertise is across the various subfields, including cultural geography or sometimes called human geography, physical geography, and GIS and geospatial work. So you'll see that thread throughout my teaching and my research. And as I said, this was how I was trained. I was broadly trained in an earth sciences program at Montana State University for my master's. And then for my PhD at Arizona State University, I continued that sort of interdisciplinary, if you will, within the already very interdisciplinary field of geography. So I love working in the field. You'll see I'm very passionate about my field work. I'm very passionate about being a geographer. I took a break between my undergraduate and graduate degrees and worked in the outdoor recreation industry quite a bit, a lot in national parks. And so that's where I sort of found my love of geography. But I also love working in the lab. I do some archival work as well in terms of looking at the historical environment. And you'll hear a little bit about that today. Some of my research that I'm working on here in San Bernardino and in the Inland Empire involves environmental justice, particularly in the context of thinking about public spaces, parks, and what's called park equity, water resources. And I always bring an element of the visual environment and the cultural landscape into that. You'll see some examples, very brief today, right? As I said, I also work in geospatial technologies, particularly mobile GIS, online GIS. I've worked with student teams before, and we've developed projects where we've built mobile applications or mobile apps for national parks, focusing on sort of interpreting the cultural and physical landscape. I've done 3D visualizations of various outdoor and indoor environments, all kinds of stuff, right? And my specialty is here in the Western United States. I'm delighted to be in California. I just moved here from Idaho, where I was an associate professor for 9 years. And now moving to California, I get to explore a different part of the Western United States. But I also have a specialty in Europe in terms of regions. And my work is balanced between national and international work. I attend a lot of international conferences pre-COVID and hopefully again after COVID. And I continue to keep those networks with friends and colleagues around the world. So that's another kind of part of my life too. I'm a passionate traveler, as many geographers are, right? In terms of thinking about other things, my students are really the core of what I do. I'm so excited to meet you all and to be part of this, and thank very much the SAGES group for inviting me. Much of my work involves taking students out into the field, and lots of different types of field in that respect. So here you can see some pictures from a national park seminar, field seminar I used to teach, where we went into Yellowstone National Park for 2 weeks, and we were using the method of repeat photography for long-term environmental modeling, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. But these are the kind of experiences that I love for students, and it could be something like a 2-week intensive seminar, but I also love just taking students out into our backyard of our campus or the Inland Empire, and I'm teaching a field methods course this semester where we have the opportunity to do that. Like I said, students are absolutely core to my success. So I know I'm talking to a student group here. So I want to mention that, I look forward to, as you feel comfortable or interested in it, please feel free to email me. Certainly, I hope to see you in my classes. But I love to train students not only in the field, but also in scholarly research, co-authoring presentations for conferences, or maybe even a journal article down the line. Lots of different types of digital creative projects that I've done in the past that we could talk about here as well. But again, I just really enjoy working with students at various different levels, and that's what really fuels a lot of my work and interest. You can find out a little bit more about me, obviously through this, but also if you go to the CSUSB webpage for the Department of Geography and Environmental Sciences, my profile is listed there. So you could see my education, as I already mentioned. My PhD was at Arizona State University down in Phoenix, basically Tempe and Phoenix. So I was used to the heat there, still getting used to coming back to the heat here, slowly but surely. My master's work was at Montana State University, that's in Bozeman, Montana. And for that work, for my PhD work, my major field project and area was Grand Canyon National Park. And for my master's, I worked primarily in Yellowstone National Park. You'll see just a little bit of that today. And then, like I said, I took a big break between my undergraduate and graduate degrees, but my undergraduate degree was from Florida State University. So I love state universities. I love public education. And the courses I'm teaching right now, I'm teaching the Geographic Field Methods, the Environmental Studies Orientation Seminar, and professional conferences. And actually, just next week, we're taking several CSUSB students, either virtually or in person, to the APCG conference, the Association of Pacific Coast Geographers, which is our regional geography conference and scholarly network. So very exciting stuff. So please tune in for that. We'll be sharing information about how that's moving along with everybody. And then in the spring, just to plug some courses, I'm teaching an advanced topics in environmental studies focused on national parks and public lands. And I'm also teaching conservation natural resources, and then professional conferences again, but this time we're going to teach it online and emphasize online conferences. So a little bit about the teaching that I'm doing. My specialization, as I already mentioned, a couple of those different areas, and I'll talk about a little bit more, but I just wanted to show you my page here, and that also links to an external website where you can see some of my previous work too, if you're particularly curious about that sort of thing. So just a quick overview of some recent and ongoing work. And I mentioned this in terms of my research, but again, my research is always with students. So if you're interested in any of the things I talk about today, and you'd like to be part of some of these projects, please let me know. And particularly I'm looking at, you'll see the last slide for some students to work on a more recent work. But my overall agenda is to better understand how multiple, often conflicting ideas and meanings of nature and culture are contested, negotiated, and translated into environmental policies and management through the medium of landscape. Now, I know that's a lot of words, right? But the idea here is that I'm interested in looking at how we understand landscapes, environmental landscapes, cultural landscapes, physical, geographical landscapes. That's the medium that we're working with. And these places are infused with ideas. And sometimes those ideas might be about how do we manage that land as a public land, and there's lots of other things that could be involved as well. And I try to pull that apart in lots of different ways. My work is very interdisciplinary and even transdisciplinary. I work with federal land management agencies like the National Park Service, city and state agencies as well, and always a lot of community engagement with the communities that I'm around. So broadly, three of the big, I guess, themes of my research or types of my research these days, and my teaching, which is very much interconnected, works with environmental justice, particularly park access and equity, popular visual representations, which I'll talk about here in a second. I've already mentioned using repeat photography for long-term environmental monitoring, and that's something our field methods class is working on now. and then a number of GIS and digital and mobile technology projects. So for example, one of the projects that I worked on for actually almost 10 years, and it involved this map here, which I know is a little small on your screen, but this is of course a map of the United States, but it's a map of the United States highlighting National Park Service units of the United States. And I say units because it includes all the different places that the National Park Service manages. They include national parks, but also places called national monuments, national recreation areas, and there are over 400 of these units in the United States. For this project over 10 years, I visited over 150 of those units and gathered a lot of research about how hazards and risks are represented in danger signs, like this one that you see here on Yellowstone Lake. So I was looking at the imagery that was presented, the location, the physical situation of where that sign was, and who was in that sign and what types of danger were represented. And I did a little content analysis on the visual images and interpreted that landscape. So that was just published in 2020 in an AAG journal called GeoHumanities. So if you're interested in that, I'm happy to send that along to you as well. Another recent project is my first book, and that is The American Environment Revisited. That was published in 2018. That's a volume that I co-edited with a colleague and good friend, Jeff Buckley. And Dr. Buckley and I were interested in exploring how environmental management has changed over time all around the United States. And so we had lots of great authors that contributed chapters to that. I contributed a chapter about environmental risk in national parks. But there are some really great articles in there as well, looking at not only hazards and risks, but thinking about some of these major issues in the environment, how they've changed over time that you can see listed on the screen. I was lucky enough in 2018 and delighted to be honored with the Outstanding Researcher Award at Idaho State University. So this was a university-wide award, and this book was part of that, as well as some of the other projects I was doing. I mentioned that part of my work is looking at popular visual representations and thinking about this method called repeat photography and how that might be a way that you could monitor environmental change. So what repeat photography is, and here I'm showing you a project that I worked on several years ago. Remember, I mentioned that I like to take students in the field, and we did a Yellowstone field seminar. So this is part of the product of that. So you can kind of see, go in the field with me, we have fun. We also sometimes publish some work out of it. And we got a lot of really nice conference presentations out of this too. So this is where I led a group of Idaho State University students, and we joined a group of Missouri State University students, and our two universities came together and we did a long-term ecological monitoring, meaning long-term for us was we collected over a series of a few months in the summer, and then these repeat photos looking at trail changes in the park. So we took historic photographs of different trail locations in Yellowstone National Park. We went back, and you can see here, here's our historic photo. Here's one of our students with a printed version of our historic photo, because we're in the backcountry now. And then we took a repeat photo, a more contemporary photo of that landscape. And so if you take these historic photos, sometimes you see them called like then and now things. If you take the historic photo and you put it next to contemporary photo, you can compare everything from cultural landscape changes, different roads and buildings and other things that are constructed over time. You can also compare physical geography, such as changes in vegetation, or in Yellowstone's case, changes in the geothermal activity. So we worked at various sites around the park for this project. And here you can see a really fun one at one of the main entrances to Yellowstone National Park. This is up near the northern entrance at Mammoth. So here is the historic entrance, and you're seeing a group of horseback riders that are leaving the entrance. And then here's our contemporary repeat photo that one of our students took. Kind of fun that there's a Prius that's driving up. And then for our representation of our repeat photo, see if I can move this, we place the historic photo with on top of that and had a little transparency so you can actually see the Prius and the historic horseback riders, right? So that was a really fun project. That was published, that article was published in the Geographical Review. And again, I'm happy to show that to you if you want to see that kind of work. My current book project that the manuscript is done, it's on my editor's desk, and so now we're in the fun printing process, is called Framing the View, and it's the creation of the American icon at the Grand Canyon. And in this work, I'm looking at Grand Canyon National Park, but how we see Grand Canyon National Park. And especially as a geographer, I'm very interested in why there are just certain places in the park that people seem to think about when they think about this particular park, right? So if I were to ask you, think about the Grand Canyon, right? So maybe you've been there. So maybe an image of the Grand Canyon comes up in your head. Maybe you've never been there, but even if you haven't been there, I bet you've seen a photograph or you've seen it in movies or something. And I bet the image in your mind looks something like what's on the screen. That is that there's the colors are lots of oranges and reds. You can see you're standing on the rim. You're looking across to a blue sky, maybe with those clouds in the background. And maybe you have some people in there. Maybe you don't, right? So the interesting thing about this work is when I started to do this project, I noticed that this was the most common thing that people would describe to me when they describe the Grand Canyon. But the Grand Canyon is a very large national park unit. It is over 1.2 million acres. The centerpiece of it is the Colorado River. And it is an incredibly diverse environment. There's the rim environment. There's also the Colorado River environment, so a riparian ecosystem. There are the many trails that go up and down from the canyon. The north and the south rim have slightly different elevations. They're different about 1,000 feet, so they have different ecological communities. It's a very diverse place. However, when I started to talk to people, they always thought about the rim. As someone who'd worked on rivers for many years, I always thought from the river looking up. So I was curious about, well, why is it that there are certain places? And as a geographer, I was curious about, well, where are the places that the most common images of the canyon come from? So I was a little bit spurred on by an Arizona Republic article that asked, where's the real Grand Canyon? Which seemed like a funny question to me. I was like, well, real as in fake or what? And what this was about was a debate that I would, as I argue in my book, is continuing about where is the real center of the Grand Canyon in terms of, is it the Grand Canyon that's managed by the National Park Service? Is it the Grand Canyon that's known and recognized and affiliated with the many Native American tribes that surround and that have deep roots to this park? Is it with tourists that come there from all around the world? Where's the real Grand Canyon, right? And so that was a little bit of the inspiration. It's, like I said, a book project. So beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today, but just to give you a little taste, I worked with postcards, I worked with photographs, and I worked with some films and looked at 150 years of what we call popular visual imagery of the canyon. So what were inexpensive or free ways to see the Grand Canyon, and where were those places actually in the Grand Canyon? So for example, for postcards, I looked at postcards from a company called Detroit Postcard, and you could see a few of them here. And I would find out not only the image, but I would actually go to the Grand Canyon, find the exact spot where the original photograph was taken that was then used to create these postcards. So you can see here a map of the Grand Canyon, different subregions that I divided it into for this study, and then some of the density of images. So for example, in the early period of the park establishment from 1900 to 1909, almost all the images that came out of the Grand Canyon from these particular postcards, a huge majority were from the South Rim. So this lends one to think that, maybe that's one of the reasons that people think about the Grand Canyon from the rim, is that's what most of the images have been in popular media, or at least historically. And I would argue it continues in that way, right? Like I said, I use the method of repeat photography. So the book includes a lot of, not all, I took thousands of images, but it includes many of my repeat photos. As you see, I'm doing here, I'm trying to line up this historic photograph with the contemporary Grand Canyon scene. So that's a whole book project. I could talk about that for weeks, right? So, and when it comes out, you will hear about me talking about that. So I love it. I'm very passionate about it. And that book should be out hopefully sometime next year. The other thing that I want to mention to you is a current project and an ongoing project in Grand Teton National Park. We just finished 6 years of funding for this project and collaboration, all kinds of great work. The project looks at Grand Teton mountain range, which you can see here on the bottom. And it also looks at the Upper Snake River, which runs through the park. So the project is Braided Channels and Golden Lines. And it's referring to the braided channels of this river in terms of, if we have any river geomorphology fans out there, you'll notice that image at the top. It's a very braided river, and it is an incredibly dynamic river in the summer, or excuse me, in the spring months. The channels close, they open. There's a tremendous amount of cold water streaming through there. It's a very exciting river, and for the scenic river guides who work on it, it's a place that changes every single day that they go out there. The Golden Lines refers to the mountaineering National Park Service rangers that do search and rescue in the mountains. So this project was looking at outdoor recreation history of the park and the cultural landscapes and the environmental management of this area, but specifically looking at the Snake River scenic guides, the Snake River National Park Service Rangers, and then the National Park Service Rangers for the Jenny Lake Mountaineering and Climbing Group. So again, it's a much longer project, but just to give you a little taste of it, here is a picture of one of our historic guides, Frank Ewing. So for this project, we collected oral histories of some of the pioneering guides. And by pioneering, I mean outdoor recreation and what we called venture outdoor recreation, things like whitewater rafting, mountain biking, some types of skiing, those kinds of activities, and climbing as we know it today. They have their historic roots well back in history, but in terms of the contemporary way that we do things like river rafting on rubber rafts, the techniques that are used, the equipment, the styles, that's something that's very much grounded in the post-World War II era and this surplus of equipment that came out of the war. So it's, like I said, a much bigger project, but the park had absolutely no documentation for much of this history. Their archives, they had a few things, but in terms of if you were a student or a researcher who wanted to look at outdoor recreation in the park or the cultural landscape along the river or the mountains, there wasn't very much. So we collected oral histories, we digitized thousands of maps and photographs, we created original GIS data sets, and we did repeat photography sets along the river. So I'm also plugging this in that we just finished this 6-year project, but phase 2 will start soon, probably next year, but maybe a little bit in the spring. And for that, I'm looking for students who are interested in creating an online GIS story map, showing river channel changes over time and connecting it with the oral histories of people like Frank Ewing that you see here, describing what it was like to row on that river at various times in history, right? So there's a lot more to that project, but if you're interested, please get in touch with me about that. And like I said, we just finished, as in July, my team finished this. We had 7 students of undergraduate and graduate experience working on it, lots of conference presentations and papers. We recorded 22 oral histories, over 3,000 various documents and photos that were digitized. It was a massive data set, and we worked with the Park Service and the communities around Wyoming to come up with the research questions for this, and also to preserve all these materials. So now the Park Service has a public archival collection that anyone, students, faculty, the public can go, and they can now learn about these times and these people and these landscapes in the park. So that's it. I know I've already taken a good amount of our time, but I want to make sure we have some time for questions as well. Like I said, I have lots of other projects to talk about. I didn't even get a chance to get to our mobile apps or other kinds of fun stuff or 3D scanning, but happy to talk about any of that or some of the things I talked about today. So thank you so much.
Christine, you're on mute.
I'm still muted. I was saying thank you so much. I feel tired for you just listening to that. You're so you've got like your hands everywhere. I thought I was busy. No, it's really, really inspirational to hear, especially I mean, it so happens we're all female here right now too. And seeing a woman in the science and a woman like just do so much and be so strong and just like, I don't know. It's like, oh, yeah, I think it's great.
Well, I'm very passionate, as I said, partly because, you know, this is why I love teaching what I do. I found geography in my master's work, and it explained everything to me that I wanted. And so I'm a voracious reader. I'm passionate about my work. I love getting students out with what I'm doing. And so, you know, the threads are there. I showed you those 3 threads. They're kind of my themes that run through all my work, you know, but in my mind, it all threads together. And that's where I wanted to say, you know, I'm broadly trained. So trying to show you like that kind of great broad training, which we have in our department, where you can do a little physical, you could do a little cultural geography, you could do a little GIS. It just opens so many doors. So yeah, I hope it's helpful.
That's super helpful. And I'm going to be bugging you a lot. You kind of opened Pandora's box right now with that. I wanted to read a question from the chat. Darla asked earlier at the beginning of your presentation, when you were talking about environmental justice, she asked if the expansion of Amazon through the whole Inland Empire also fall for a subject to be included in environmental justice / environmental racism, or the rate of warehouses. I think she basically wanted to kind of get your take on that.
Yes. Yeah. The answer is yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And was that from Darla? Did you say? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Darla, for that question. You are right on target there with a fascinating part of the Inland Empire's cultural landscape, but very much our environmental geography in terms of the impact of the expansion of those warehouses. That is absolutely an environmental justice topic, related in some extent to what I was talking about with park access, in terms of green spaces, open, they don't have to be actually green, but open spaces, right? But the impact on sound in neighborhoods from the trucks, the airplanes, the impact on those buildings going up in places that could have been open spaces, the impact on traffic in the neighborhoods. I mean, there's some air quality, right? And then the impact on businesses and jobs, right? And there's that you're on a wonderful topic there. If you have any interest in that, I'd love to talk with you more about that. But yeah, that's definitely a big environmental justice issue for us. And I should say, Darla, too, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I don't know why you would, because I didn't post it yet, but I'll give it to our SAGES group. But if you haven't looked at it yet, you would really maybe enjoy looking at the EPA's environmental justice mapping tool. It's an online GIS. Have you seen it yet? No? Okay. I've got too many things going on here to share it on chat, but I will send it to our SAGES leaders here and maybe they can distribute it. It is a wonderful resource where it's an online GIS. So, you know, if you know GIS, great. If you don't, it's just online. You can click, it's a map, but it has a huge amount of data that the Environmental Protection Agency has been collecting. They update it regularly. So it's not just stale map that someone created 10 years ago. And on that, you can zoom in anywhere you want in the United States, but you could zoom in on the Inland Empire and you can look at everything from, you know, hazardous waste, lead paint. They don't map the Amazon warehouses just yet, but well, you can basically do overlays of demographics and all kinds of things. And I think again, that might be a resource you'd really enjoy looking at. But yeah, keep in touch. I'd love to hear more if you're interested in it.
Thank you. Yeah, 'cause at least my lens is more on globalization because I'm a global studies major.
Ooh,
So that's what I'm really interested in, at least in also incorporating your views on it and how.
yeah.
Because I feel like in the long run, that's something I would like to study on and do my research on.
Yeah. Well, Amazon's global. I mean, that's not that you want to work with Amazon, but you know, in terms of when we think about the process of globalization as the interconnectedness of people and places and economic processes, it's not just trade, right? It's globalization is a matter of social and cultural exchanges, and yeah, the impact of Amazon as a global company or other companies you might be thinking of. That's a terrific topic and easy to trace those routes from the Inland Empire in terms you could trace it through goods shipped, orders, all the different companies, tons of stuff to do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Darla, for your question. We have a few minutes if anyone else had any questions. It's open for anyone to unmute. Don't feel shy. If you had any questions for Dr. Youngs. All right. Well, since it's quiet, I actually had a question, but I feel like I'm like taking over the microphone, and I wanted to get other people an opportunity first. When did you first discover your passion for geography?
Ooh, thanks for that. Great question.
Yeah, it sounds like a loaded one.
Yeah, I know.
That to me is always so fascinating. When did you have that like aha moment that this is
it?
Yeah.
That's a great question, Nellie, because of course, it's fun to talk about. We like to talk about ourselves, right? But also, that's a good question to ask geographers, any geographer you bump into, because many geographers found their passion or the field maybe later in life or later in their degree, or and it used to be through stamp collecting. People are into that, travels and things along those lines. So it's always great to hear a geographer's story. My particular story is through that gap that I mentioned. Between my undergraduate and graduate careers, I started out my undergraduate degree at Florida State University. So I grew up on the beautiful and lovely Gulf Coast, white sandy beaches and mild environments, temperatures always the same, no mountains, and I couldn't stand it. I was one of those people that just seemed really wonderful at the time. Yeah, I just was one of those people who grew up there, and I just couldn't get out fast enough. And I went to Yellowstone. As a kid, we would take these road trips, and I saw glaciers, and I got stuck in a hailstorm, and I saw how dramatic the mountains were and the rivers. And I just became enthralled with the Western landscape, quite frankly. The Intermountain West at that point, but I came to know the Pacific West as we're in here. And then as soon as I graduated from Florida State, I got my little Honda Civic, and I just drove straight to Yellowstone and I started working there. And that led to working at Yellowstone, Grand Teton, lots of other parks. And then that eventually led to becoming a professional whitewater and wilderness raft guide. And so I worked for 10 years. I took up, that 1 year that you take off, or you might be thinking about taking off, or maybe you have. That turned into 2, and then 3. And then my parents were giving up on me, and then 4, then 5, and then 10. I took off a lot of time, but I started working for the largest whitewater company in the Western United States called Oars, which is actually based out of California. And they have operations all around the West. So I worked on multi-week, multi-day trips, rowing a big, couple hundred.
Wow.
A big raft, 18-foot raft. Down whitewater stretches in the Snake River, in Dinosaur National Monument, on the Yampa and the Green. I've worked on the San Juan, sections of the Colorado, all that stuff. So that job put me in national parks often. And when I was there, I was thinking, if I keep taking years off of school, maybe I'm not interested in my undergraduate. Maybe I need to change my degree, right? At the same time, I was developing these really complex mile by mile notes for the other guides, because, we had whitewater, but then you'd have, for multi-week trips, you also have flat water. You're just rowing. Again, they're like 1-ton boats, you're rowing with like a bunch of people on them. Well, yeah, I enjoyed being stronger at that point, but also you need something to talk about, right? After day 2, everybody knows everybody's family. You got your story. Okay, now you've got 2 more weeks on the river together, right? So being on the river means that the scene is just changing as you float along. So I developed these mile by mile interpretive notes where I'd say, oh, we often see bighorn sheep here. Bighorn sheep are known for being in this environment. And then I'd say, oh, and here's, going to be a cabin. Here's going to be a site, whatever. So eventually I got, my fellow guide said, you should really go back to school, so I went back to school and I realized my passion was parks, but that was very specific. I needed to broaden it out a little bit. And so I went into public lands, and then I found geography, and it allowed me to be in the field, which I'm clearly passionate about. I love being outdoors. It allowed me to explore the cultural landscape and the physical landscape, hold them hand in hand. And it really allowed me to have research questions and then go out and explore them, or go to the library and read about it, or go to the archive and learn about it. It just provided very integrative, and sometimes geography is referred to as inherently interdisciplinary because you can study anything with geography as long as you're thinking about where and why, right? So that's a longer story, and it could get even longer if you wanted it, but that's the idea, is that I took off a break. I found my passion in my places. And then when I came back to grad school, I connected the places with the disciplines, which had changed a lot in 10 years. So
That's awesome though.
yeah, so
It's
I can
like-
really.
Oh,
Go
sorry, I
ahead.
didn't mean to cut you off. There's a delay sometimes, so so I'm so sorry. No, it's just really cool how we all kind of come full circle and find things that it
Right.
took, you working on the whitewaters and the rapid, as a tour. I don't know, it's so cool. I can't put words to it right now, but it's always like that's one of the questions I like to ask people, especially in geography. Like you said, it's really cool this year where people get their start. I think Angeli, I'm talking over her too, so I'll stop because I'm a
You're
talker.
fine. You're good. So I posted the egsgreen.epa link in the chat.
you.
So for Darla and anyone else that wants to check it out, I know Dr. Young's introduced it to me yesterday, and it kind of just opened a Pandora's box of ideas. So now I'm anyways, but yeah, I'll talk about that more later. But yeah, also I noticed Giselle said she's in awe of how involved you are, Dr. Young's very inspirational. And then although her main focus is veterinary medicine, she wants to contribute to helping the environment. And she was wondering how rigorous your classes are.
Well, thank you so much for those comments. It's tremendous. And I hope to see you in classes. My classes are rigorous, I've got to say. I expect a lot of my students, but I expect a lot of myself. So I'm very supportive. I try to provide courses that have materials and all kinds of different learning methods and strategies, open to online or hybrid or in person. So I really try to meet students wherever you are. And that's part of why I told a bit of an extended story there about my little, how I found geography, because I really connect with, I don't know if you're one of these students, but I really connect with CSUSB students who maybe take some time off, or maybe you start in a degree and then you realize you're not so excited about that degree, and you're looking for something else. And to me, when I found geography, I found a lot of my answers. And I hope that students, students here on this session and those who might be watching later online, will find that geography and environmental studies, really, if you're passionate about the environment, which it sounds like you are, if you're interested in veterinary medicine, you're interested in animals, of course, right? But you're interested in wildlife, which means you're interested in the habitats they're in. There's lots of interconnections that can happen there. So yeah, I could keep talking, but does that answer your question, Giselle?
She said
good.
definitely. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
you had chat up.
Yeah. Yeah, I just opened it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, and again, feel free to reach out to me by email, or and we could talk more on Zoom or whatever.
This was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I could talk forever with you. I feel like you're just so warm and welcoming and easy to talk to.
Yeah.
I feel like Sages needs to have like a whole coffee hour with you.
That would be great. And I was talking yesterday too about I would love to join some of the Sages field trips and things.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big camper, of course, right? You know, with my background, I love if you go camping, or even if you do, you know, I'd love it if you all would teach me about the Inland Empire. I've studied it a lot from afar, but now that I'm living here, you know, I look forward to, as it's appropriate, with the faculty joining student trips.
Yeah.
I'd love to join your trips. And in the spring, we talked about maybe doing some sort of
Catalina
a
trip. I'm not
park
Catalina.
trip,
Sorry. Channel
No,
Islands trip.
go ahead.
Sorry. But I was really excited about that. So I sent Dr. Coate an email last night saying like I really want to coordinate something with Dr. Youngs about the whole Channel Island trip, and then start getting plans ready so we could advertise it to students in the department and whoever else is interested. So
Let's do it.
yeah, I'm
Okay,
down
we'll
for
see.
it.
We'll see. I was just pitching it. It was just
I want to do it.
just the yeah. He's
You'll
gonna
find
be
with
like,
us, you pitch something and it's gonna become a reality. We
Yeah. Especially like if I really like
There's
it, I'm
no
gonna make
chill.
it happen. So,
Yeah. Good.
chill with us.
Good. Well, it's you know, I've been to that. I call it a site. I've been to that unit, the Channel Islands unit before. But I'd really like to and I'll do some research on it in terms of you know, arranging a trip out there. But like I said, I love taking people in the field, you know, meaning that kind of thing, right? Like I love taking groups out, and we could do some field lectures, and we could also just hang out. There's tons of camping on the islands. We'll have to do it later in the spring, because I do believe they do run that shuttle, but it's pretty rough seas earlier in the spring out there. But fascinating. And there's a National Park Service cooperative research station there. So that means that the Park Service has said, yes, we want university groups to come here and do research, and they support it with, you know, basic like kitchen facilities and some dorm facilities. I don't know the quality. I haven't gone out there for that
it's
one
okay,
yet,
but we're just
Yes.
down to go anyway.
Yeah,
We
well,
don't care about the quality.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the camping will be more fun, like on our own, but we could maybe visit that research center, you know,
Mhm.
and we could do hikes. And if we could talk other, you know, if other faculty are interested in going, maybe we could do, you know, one faculty talks about their perspectives on, you know, this part of the landscape or that part of the landscape or whatever, you know, or we could just go camp and hang out. It doesn't have to be a full-on learning experience, you know, but I will be teaching that national parks course this spring. So I really want to encourage those students to join Sages and to maybe join that trip. But yeah, let's keep talking about it.
Yes, for
Sounds good.
sure. Yeah.
Well,
I
I
think
will
it's kind of
teach-
funny, but oh, my bad.
No, go ahead, Angelia.
I don't
Like
know.
said, I have a delay going, and I'm
Mm,
so sorry
it's,
for cutting anyone off.
No, it's okay. You're all good. But yeah, it's kind of funny how I kind of started off with math, and then now that I'm in my master's and I'm finding my love for geography stuff, and it's just been a very interesting academic journey. So,
I've been telling Jelly like how amazing this department is, because we met in
Mm-hmm.
Model UN, and I'm just like, you will be so supported here and stuff. And I'm like, so she
I love
texts me
everybody.
every time, and she's like, I love so and so. I love so and so. I'm like, see, I told you, it wasn't just me making it up. Like everyone is so great
Mhm.
here.
It's a really strong, I could tell you from my perspective on the other side of things, that it's a very strong department you have here in terms of the scholarship represented by their faculty, the expertise, the teaching excellence, and the students, you all, you know, it's really exceptional. It's not on all universities, and we're wonderfully lucky here. So it's a good place.
It is. I
Yeah.
agree. Well, I could talk all day, and it sounds like you could talk all day. I know, and Jelly, we can all talk all day, but it's 1:05, and I know you probably have some classes and stuff coming up and
Mhm.
all that good stuff. So let's maybe do like a coffee day or something where we have
Sure.
another chat. I really liked this, and it seems like it's really cool getting to know our professors. We can schedule something, you know, in a couple weeks or something maybe. But thank you again. Thanks for taking the time. I can't imagine how chaotic it's got to be, not only moving and relocating, but also having a new place.
coordinating a conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on. So it means a lot to us here in Sages that you took an hour out of your day and you chatted with us. And we value your time, and we value what you did for us today. So thank you so much. It's appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you all again very soon. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr.
And
Youngs.
Thank you, Dr. Young. Thank you, Carla, Sophia, Giselle.
And anybody watching this?
Yeah, and anyone else watching. This concludes our Meet the Professors. This has been a long series, but hopefully everyone got something out of it. So
Yeah.
have a
Good
nice
stuff.
day.
Anyway,
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Bye. Bye, Dr. Youngs.
Bye.
How do I- There we go. I'm going to stop recording.